Welcome to Studio Re. We are offering one more program together with newspaper Resonancy and radio station Utsnobin. It's a project Let's Know Europe, supported by the European Union delegation in Georgia. And we have already offered several programs out of the cycle on different subjects, where the best way the European Union delegation activities were presented, and active citizens who, together with the European Union, are trying to contribute to creation of a democratic environment in Georgia. Today we will talk about human rights protection and how the European Union delegation contributes to development of human rights protection condition in Georgia. And we have invited guests who are the most competent to talk on the subject. Boris Yaroshevich, EU delegation deputy head, Nino Andriashvili, Human Rights Center representative, Tato Kelbakiani, MCLA, assistance of head of penitentiary department, Tsira Chanturia, Penal Reform International, and George Togushi, Georgia's public defender. Thank you very much for coming to the studio, and now let's talk together about the condition of human rights in Georgia. And what does the European Union delegation to meet this standard and to make it more modern and more practical? So, first question is for Mr. Boris Yaroshevich. How does the European Union help Georgia in terms of human rights protection, and meaning both government and civil society?
Yes, I would like to say that human rights are at the core of our relations. We acknowledge the EU aspiration of Georgia, and EU aspirations mean also EU values, and that's why human rights are really at the center of our political dialogue and our work here in Georgia, and it's also a very important part of our assistance programs and cooperation programs with Georgia. And the agenda is very broad in the field of human rights, because we are concerned by media freedom, we are concerned by free and fair elections, by labor and social rights, and of course human rights as far as defense of human rights is concerned, and we will discuss that with the Ombudsman I think today. And also very important for us are the issue of criminal justice and the situation in the prisons, because we see that the imprisonment rate and the population in prison rate is very high in Georgia, so it's much higher than in the EU member states. So that's why we are working a lot in that field to have a reduction in the penitentiary population by different measures, like alternative forms of, let's say, punishment. We work a lot on juvenile justice, I mean, to avoid young people to be sent to prison. And also we would like to improve the condition in the prisons, particularly the health care in prison could be improved. So that's basically the starting point of our support, and then we have a number of projects and programs that we probably will discuss in the course of our meeting today.
A lot of components have been named just to picture the condition of human rights. Could we invent some informal ranging system just to sort out where we have better situation, where we have the worst, and etc., etc., etc.? First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. Of course, it's a very important issue. I mean, the part of European Union in terms of human protection and, in general, the condition in this aspect in Georgia. In general, it's hard to invent a certain scheme or plan, as you said, just arranging problems based on certain criteria's existence. For instance, specific direction may not be problematic during the year, but just the practical state may cause the worsening of the situation, and the situation around human rights may become even worse than it was this year. However, there are systematic problems that just keep being uniform during the year. Based on the complaints which we often see on the table of ombudsmen, and about those categories addressing public offender with different complaints, we often see these complaints from the detainees, especially talking about penitentiary residents, and we frequently receive complaints from those just complaining of health rights, and also frequently we receive complaints from IDPs from different regions of Georgia, and besides, public defender is often approached with administration-type complaints when this or that establishment issued this or that kind of order, and the person in question thinks that his rights were violated. And frequently I am approached by the people living in extreme poverty about health rights realization, also outside the penitentiary system, and besides, we get a lot of complaints from invalids, disabled people who, because of extreme poverty, can't use a different range of services. So the range is quite extensive. However, we just shouldn't forget about family violence, freedom of expression, just freedom of meetings and demonstrations and rallies. I just named the most talked about things, but when a citizen addresses you just due to his condition in the penitentiary system, what are the most frequently caused problems? In past, the frequent ones were just daily complaints, connected with daily issues, the overloading, absence of hygiene, and realistically, the big part of this issue has been solved for those years, but still there are some issues to be addressed. And not all recommendations were met. However, we have received a lot of complaints of DC abuse, especially first year of 2011. On the part of detainees, and health complaints, and timely response about health issues. We had cases when we were addressed due to accessibility to outworld, for example, accessibility to media, and realization of rights when, for example, based on the law, the rights based on the law just were not fulfilled in real life. And very often, many people addressed us with just heart diseases, but it didn't get any benefits, which just goes out of competence of ombudsman. However, just we noted about that in our reports. However, the range of problems is quite extensive. But as I said, the problems also have been changed. Before, it touched upon more daily issues like sanitary and hygiene norms, absence of fuel, and quality of food. But now they were replaced just majorly by health issues, and I can't say that abuse of power just is frequently received by us. We had cases when women detainees addressed us with different kinds of complaints about being of their children and about juveniles. So these complaints are sent to you, but further, either any tool just to address these issues. This year, when public defender report will come out public, we just dedicated special chapter which will describe the work of public defender, the work which has been completed during 1 year. I can say, I can note that there are some positive trends in terms of health. Part of recommendations have been taken into consideration. It's about licensing of certain establishment. I mean, it was impossible for detainees to be healed in those kinds of establishments. Also, medical document work, labor, and individual recommendations about the specific facts of violation. And the issue connected with medical personnel responsibility. It goes just out of competence of public defender, and so of course the health ministry is responsible for that, and its role is important. But some things connected with infrastructure, with different regimes, long-term dates, they have been considered, and I don't want to be part of all success, but I guess that partly I think that based on our insistent request and monitoring supported by European Union in penal establishments have brought a lot of positive results. So can we see that these positive results are tangible, things which just Georgi told about? We can see that we can see some positive changes and innovations, and we can see the willingness of department and ministry to implement novelties to improve the daily life of detainees and certain services. And as George noted, we can definitely spot the positive trends, but of course there are still some issues to be addressed. But what are most problematic issues? Issue of overloading, which is not just fault of penitentiary system. We have a lot of prisoners, and it's of course very large number for our country, and in the first place, this system should be addressed. I mean, for the negative results to be addressed. Overloading, of course, causes a lot of negative results as violation of rights, limitation of rights. When we talk about overloading, So it means that a lot of more penitentiaries should be set up, or legislation should be improved. As for overloading, the work has been started already in this direction. I should like to note with pleasure, and last year we implemented criminal justice alternative mechanism towards detainees and juveniles, and different kinds of punishments have been activated, and for the last several months, do you have any statistics? Yes, we carefully keep tabs on statistics. For example, if those norms were not implemented, I mean just beneficial labor for the society. You know, we have been asking for several months statistics, and I'd like to know that for the past years, the growth, monthly growth of prisoners was about 200, 300. I mean, the number of prisoners were increasing that speed, but definitely for the several months we can see the decrease trends, and we hope that it will continue just like that. You have, as a lawyer, just daily meetings and touch the trends which public defender mentioned. I would completely agree with George on that score. The issues which George highlighted, equally I can confirm that on the first stage I would call penitentiary system and the issues about health. This is an issue which we are often addressed by detainees and their family members. And we face different problems in terms of health. They are addressing joint commission. Yes, it's common commission of penitentiary and health ministry, and commission is responsible for considering the complaints, and if they are sick with heavy diseases, commission is responsible to liberate them, to release these prisoners. But have you had just similar cases when, for example, a prisoner applied for example, how many of them and how many were met? About 6 complaints were registered in 2011, since 2011 up to now. However, we haven't had any response. And before these detainees addressed us, they themselves addressed the Commission and requested to work on the release issue. However, they did not get any answer, and more than 1 year has passed since they applied for, since they filed for, but no answer to any of these complaints, and we assume that this Commission is not working at all. It's not meeting its responsibilities undertaken based on legislation, and probably it would be better both for Ministry of Health and Penitentiary should take a joint decision whether this Commission should continue its activities or not. One more issue mostly addressed is medical provision. If a detainee has no family members or close relatives who would take care about supply of required medicals, it means that detainee remains absolutely unprotected, and the state of his health deteriorates day by day as the health establishment is not able to meet to protect his health. However, every time I requested their health or sick history, sick list, those medicals have been registered there. I mean, necessary for the detainees, and the detainees noted that those medicaments, those medicines were not supplied to them. However, no reaction, unfortunately. So 2 issues have been highlighted. One is which we have already discussed. I mean, medical provision, proper medical provision, and to what extent this service is equally adequate to the prisoner, to the detainee, based on his needs. Thank you very much for invitation and letting me take part in the discussion, and as EU delegation representatives are here, I'd like to highlight their substantial support in terms of development of penitentiary, I mean expertise and organization different events within penitentiary system. And we are in close relationship with the Public Defender's Office, and personally I always get myself thoroughly acquainted with reports of Public Defender, and this institute I perceive as a certain link helping us to identify important issues. Of course, we have our own opinions, and we just talk about this both informally or formally. However, I think that we would like to see just in general the picture, what we had before, and when we highlight the infrastructure, I would note that infrastructure, which is cornerstone for development of any establishment, I mean, if detainees have no living space, it's impossible to conduct any reforms. And for last 6 years, 3 new establishments have been set up. Part of them have been refurbished, part of them are brand new. And of course, I agree with Public Defender with many things he noted. But is it already decided that the Zugiri penitentiaries will be closed? Yes, decision has been already taken. And as alternative, it was started, I mean, construction work has been started in Laituri, and to replace those penitentiary establishments. Of course, we would like to completely change infrastructure, but as I noted, it's just foundation, and it should be built on further. But overloading issue, well, and personally, you just recognize, you admit that overloading issue exists. Well, it depends on how we look at that. Now, the main goal of implementing and developing infrastructure was that we had to replace the old one with new one. And simply old system has been replaced in this term, but number of detainees has been increased. Unfortunately, we are not happy about that fact, and I personally would like the number of prisoners to be much less. However, just Georgian legislation has been liberated for last years, and we can definitely see the trends to decrease. It's substantial decrease, and it's that's due to the program of rehabilitation on part of Ministry of Justice. It's a very nice initiative, and I think that alternative ways of service are being implemented, and let's hope that the number of prisoners will be substantially decreased in future. Now we have an opportunity to offer you some video prepared by our colleagues from Batumi. It's just history of ex-detainee and how he just rehabilitated socially after he was released. The guy had a hard life, he was twice sentenced, he's 18 years old, but now he's together with his sick mother and two sisters. And he continued study in Sea Royal Academy. However, his student status was cancelled due to disability to pay for his study. The guy talks about his background in education, and he says he wanted to become a student of the academy, Sea Academy. And the guy says that he wants to do more his life to reach, to set and reach new goals. And the guy says that his mother really hopes that he will become a good citizen. It's an institute of democracy, and about the implementing the project with support of the EU.
არასამთავრობო ორგანიზაცია ამ კატეგორიის ოჯახებს დასაქმებაში, სწავლაში, პროფესიულ გადამზადებაში
It helps to settle legal issues.
პროექტია, რომლის ფარგლებშიც არასამთავრობო ორგანიზაციამ 2 თვის განმავლობაში
and studied the state of 30 beneficiaries for the last several years.
დემოკრატიის ინსტიტუტი ევროკავშირის ხარდაჭერით უკვე მესამე თვე ახორციელებს პროექტს.
The project is targeted to contribute to rehabilitate the state of ex-detainees just released from prison, and the project took interest from those kinds of families. Now we have 30 beneficiaries, and the persons in question, they are already socially involved, and we are working with these people. So the guy is going through the educational courses within the framework of the project. Now he's intending to go to Turkey to find a job there. I've got a question for Boris. This is a project which European Union helps Institute of Democracy to implement and helps ex-detainees to rehabilitate socially. So how optimally do you see that such assistance, such support should be offered to those organizations who would start social rehabilitation in penitentiary establishments?
Yes, our support, it has already been said, our support covers a lot of aspects. We work with the Ombudsman, that we support a lot. We work with the Ministry of Justice, with the Ministry of Corrections, but also we work with civil society organizations. And this kind of project, I think, is very, very successful. And I know that Georgia has progressed very well in the field of rehabilitation of juvenile offenders. A lot has still to be done for adult offenders when they go out of prison. And as it was said, the question is that the population in prison is too high, and it's true that the government does a lot to modernize infrastructures. A lot has been done, but still the carceral population is too high compared to other or to EU countries or to other countries. So there, I think we have to work not only downstream to help people to get a job and after they or to continue studies after they finish their prison term, but we have also to work upstream to avoid this large carceral population. And as it was said, I mean, Georgia is also liberalizing its criminal code, which is very good. Because definitely we need to tackle this issue of number of inmates, which is extremely high. But I must say that so far our work has been very, very successful, be it with ministries, be it with public offender office, or be it with civil society organizations.
And what do you think? Can we say that maybe it's a game of words, but I mean, in terms of number, for just penitentiary systems to be more open to such initiatives? We have had several projects within the penitentiary, and they are still going. And within the framework of UNICEF, it was very important, the support of EU, and approaches have been fundamentally changed, and certain services have been developed, and now we have a project, a rehabilitation project, and we are implementing courses of professional rehabilitation. GIP, GCI are helping as well, and we are enjoying good support, and we appreciate it, but our priority is that similar projects should be used to further institutionalize those processes within the system. Core support is quite substantial. We hope that it will continue. However, in future we will be responsible for organizing certain processes, and that's what we did after we got support in juvenile establishment. And we have implemented individual approach, and the ministry just undertook the responsibility, and within the framework of EU project, this is a process of monitoring, and they are able to follow the process. And in general, we would like the similar rehabilitation projects just to be the primary goal and to be developed in the rest of the system. Now the ministry has offered 10 priorities, its professional courses in different establishments, and some educational information houses have been installed and set up, and partly we financed, and with the help of different universities, for example, our professional courses and art courses, and we are continuing our work to implement more and more processes, and we are absolutely open to our partners, and as it was noted, our NGO partners have been still implementing different projects. The project which you are implementing, for how many years has it been working? And how many persons have you had an opportunity to work with? This is the project supported by European Union financially. It's about preparation of women detainee for release from imprisonment. I think from 6 months to 1 year we will take this length of time, but you haven't started yet. No, we haven't. It's a fresh project. It's still undergoing just some preparatory period. And we are trying to work on just joint conception to implement individual approaches to those women. We have to identify the priorities, needs of these women detainees, and then we should take our efforts, I mean both psychological, professional, and some other just ways of assistance for them to able them to just make their living using certain professions. As for your question, you know that EU for the several years has been actively supporting the civic society of Georgia, NGOs that are implementing those kind of rehabilitation projects for probationers. It's very important because it fills those gaps that still exist in terms of allocation of resources. And Tado has mentioned institutionalization, and it's very nice. It means that government after some period will undertake similar programs and those implementations. And before that, with the help of EU and other donors, some public organizations are are involved, and it's very important. And I think one of the priorities of the system is just resocialization of the detainee. And to what extent just a citizen after imprisonment uses the services. So, to what extent this person, for example, after imprisonment is interested in using those kinds of services? Well, I have not had personal experience. However, I would like to touch upon one issue in terms of libraries. Based on their interest, I have applied many times, applied the ministry many times, just to clarify those issues, just to find out the condition of libraries in establishments. And as detainees note, they lack literature, proper literature to get information and education. However, based on the information of the penitentiary, they said that they provide proper literature. However, I can't imagine, I can't understand whether there is proper literature in libraries for detainees to get knowledge. Did you receive any similar complaints as for resocializing and preparation of detainees? I mean, in terms of release after imprisonment. Today we have started to think about the practical implementation. This is just a turning point because if we just look into the report of Public Defender for the last year, we just touched upon the employment of detainee resocializing opportunities to implement other projects. It's good that today we talk about implementation and just whether these organizations are able to do that with help of or without help of EU. However, some infrastructure is being constructed and system is being implemented. However, we had different situation towards juveniles. We had a large range of projects, and these people were being prepared to be released after imprisonment. And one more issue, just Nino mentioned the library issue. Of course, a lot of times we received this kind of complaint, a challenge for penitentiary system, not only in Georgia but in many countries, where libraries can't meet demands and choices limited. And we talk about the assistance of donors who just would buy a certain number of books and allocate to libraries. Again, detainees most frequently ask for legal literature, just the presidential law of European Court, and sometimes we send that kind of literature. And more often, detainees need some legal documents rather than some fiction. And EU, in addition to active support to Public Defender Office for several last years, I would say that technical assistance which we got from the EU was just crucially important, that allowed us to extend our monitoring coverage. If before we were concentrated on several topics before, now we just extended our monitor range. Now we cover just larger range of monitor. Just we were allowed to study different fields, different social aspects, which very often were not amongst the priorities. And I think you must have noticed that the public defender's work has become more extensive. We have opportunity to publish our work in 2 languages, and now we can send it to a range of different establishments, and attention to public defenders' reports has been increased. It has been cited more often recently, and repetition of recommendations, and it's part just, of course, to a higher degree. It's a result of 2 or 3 year assistance of European Union, and supposedly it will continue and allow us to reach better results. And I'd like to highlight that. To a certain extent, I'm happy to say that we have started to talk about those things as library preparation for release, because before we had to talk about more urgent problems. But of course, the serious challenges remain, such as heavily sick detainees and high rates of sickness. I mean, in terms of spread of contagious diseases, and the high death rate, which does not differ from last year's report, despite the fact that the number of prisoners hasn't been changed. Of course, there are just certain challenges which we should address at the same time with other, maybe not non-priority, but for me, less important issues, because the health of detainees for me is a turning point, it's a cornerstone. But what's the main problem when we talk about the health condition of a detainee? Well, a subjective problem which I would highlight, which has been static for several years, when the safety, you see, just issues are higher and are just given more priorities than health of detainees. And nobody argues that penitentiary is regime-based, and some strict rules should exist and safety rules should be met, but we often face absolutely distinctive disbalance when health requirements are not met and protected. And I think our guests would agree that certain actions are quite late to be responded. That may cause, that may distribute, it may just contribute to death rate growth, right? Yes, we have had more than one fact of that kind. However, we had cases when, for example, the detainee dies, but if he has a cancer of 4th grade, of course we have to talk about the retiming and not about safety and regime requirements. And we talked about commission affairs, we talked about overloading, and I would agree with that as that. Of course, the problem is not so urgent as it was a couple of years ago, when prisoners would sleep in turn and they shared one bed. But we have had issues when detainees did not have their own beds. In Zugdidi and Batumi, I think I would name. However, even in Rustavi, we had overloading. I mean, more than 500 detainees than standard. But then Ksani establishment was set up, and it seemed just a little bit improved the situation. But it's well, sad reality. However, but we should be still happy that the number of prisoners has not increased and did not exceed 24,000 prisoners. And the CIR also noted that now we use more frequently alternative punishment, and today probationers are much more than detainees, towards which punishment, I mean, this imprisonment is used. It's a positive trend. However, implementation of rehabilitation program connected with grown-up detainees, I hope that the program will start and will cover a bigger number of detainees. And today, for example, a certain number of detainees have been involved with the program. It's interesting how this program will work in the future in terms of adult detainees. It's a challenge for the system. Their number is much more, and the communication with the juveniles is quite different compared to adult detainees. I mean, range of crimes is different, and etc. etc. Tato. Nina also mentioned, and Georgi too, the commission which just functions jointly, and Deputy Minister is running the commission. There is a problem which Lina talked about, that at least 6 complaints have been registered and were not responded. And George says that response is frequently late, and the involvement sometimes is too late. So why hasn't this commission been able to become an efficient tool? I'd like to touch upon health issues and the plans of ministry. Of course, there are certain challenges in this field that should be addressed, and I can't say that based on recommendations we didn't know what issue should be addressed, but the ministry started active work to implement a new strategy, and we got other partners involved with elaborating of the documents, European Union too, also Public Defender's Office, Red Cross International Committee. The strategy has been developed. Now we are working on an action plan, and different experts also have been involved in different directions, and ministry set it up as its priority just to identify these issues, and the work of course should be continued. As for release after imprisonment, well, in this term there are certain tools that detainee may be released, and for the last year retiming, actually 38 detainees enjoyed retiming, and this year we have 15 detainees, and the tool now is working more efficiently, and the focus is this way. But death rate, what about death rate? Well, it's hard to talk about any figures or proportions, but of course lives of detainees are precious to us, and our priority is to prevent these kinds of similar facts. However, the formulation of the system, even, I mean, the prerequisite was to create infrastructure to bring the death rate and the similar facts to minimum. Of course, there are certain causes for death, and I think proper commissions should identify the reasons for death, and it should be identified and it should be addressed. And our priority is to reform health system, and we have involved all players and shareholders. And of course, we would like this reform to be coordinated with them. There have been precedents that because of urgent involvement, medical involvement, a citizen address a human rights court, and there have been several important recommendations to draw more attention to the state of these detainees and for the Commission to be more frequently involved with these issues. I'd like to talk about that too. I mean, how after the decision, after a recommendation of the European Human Rights Court, how the state of this detainee been developed and improved. Of course, we try to help when there is certain communication with court. Sometimes they ask for information about the state of health, about some temporary initiatives and measures. However, in total, the final decision takes long in terms of procedures, and we have just right communication with Ministry, and we send every information that European Court asks for. And of course, we fulfill and meet temporary measures, and there is regular communication in this aspect. Boris, 2012, since 2012, what new projects European Union has started in Georgia, and in what directions EU delegation may develop its activities in terms of improvement of human rights condition in Georgia?
We will continue to support the reform of the criminal justice, and of course we will continue the support to the public defender office. I think it's a very respected organization, and we would like to help it to fully implement its mandate. So we will really focus on the ombudsman, because it has to monitoring a number of issues in closed institutions. We mentioned prison, but also we have psychiatric institutions, we have orphanages. The ombudsman also to raise the awareness about its existence and about the services it can offer. And we can also work on the efficiency of handling individual cases. So really our priority will be to continue to support the ombudsman, also to work in the field of healthcare in the penitentiary, because we know that there is a strategy, there is an action plan which has been developed. Now we have to translate that into concrete actions and to see results, and we will continue to work in that direction.
Thank you very much. I do hope that our conversation will contribute to raise awareness of our citizens on these issues. Of course, condition of human rights leaves many questions to be asked. We talked about how European Union supports, and in general European Union, to improve the condition of human rights in Georgia, and how it helps NGOs and governmental sector. Of course, you can leave your questions in our website www.studiored.org, where you can also see the program and provide us with your ideas for our other programs on human rights issues, and I hope that our guests will also contribute to that issue. Georgi Tuvush, public defender, Tsira Chanturia, penal reform institution, Dado Kelbakiani, MCLA, assistance of head of penitentiary department, and Nino Andriashvili, human rights center. And today the position of European Union was expressed by the Minister Councillor, Deputy Head of the European Union Delegation, by Boris Yaroshevich. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.